Another recommendation is to generally avoid naming cells and cell ranges in Excel whenever possible. So Excel enables you to actually name cells. And that's good until you realize that it creates a whole boatload of problems that may be more trouble than they're worth. So let me go into Excel and kind of show you what I'm referring to. So with that same example here that we've had before, we've got WAC and the Apple price. It could be very useful if I wanted to calculate, say, the present value of all future gross profits. And WAC is 15%. I could do something like present value of, let's make this more realistic. Let's just call this, free cash flows or something. And I'm building an analysis and I want the present value of free cash flows. So if I name this cell, I can hit Control F3, click the new button that opens up the name manager, and I call it WAC. Click OK, and I'm in business. Now notice that what it does is it's created the name. By the way, I could have also just gone in here and just typed it. That would have been faster. I could just go directly to the name box. But now I did want you to take a look. You have this name manager where it sort of retains all the names. So like if I call this share price, let's just do this so you can see it. Create all, or actually let's call it share price just by going in here to the name box. You can just type in share price. So now you have, this is the name and then this is the name of this cell. So now if I want to do the present value of all free cash flows, I can do something like this divided by 1 plus, but now if I reference the cell, it's going to reference it as the name WAC. Okay, and so I can raise it to the first. Of course, in our DCF class, we're going to talk about far more sophisticated ways to do this. Turn this into a 2. And now, but notice I don't even have to anchor the cell. It just keeps following. And if I just got a little bit smarter about naming this to make this dynamic, I don't need to really reference or anchor by hitting F4. Because normally, if I didn't have that, if it was just a cell reference, for example, I referred it to cell C7, I can hardcode override it and I hit F4. I'd have to hit F4 to sort of anchor it. Without that, it would just sort of 8. So if I copy and paste that across, it would just get the wrong calculation. This enables me to anchor a cell, and not only that, so let me start again, and not only that, I get the benefit, and this is really the primary benefit of naming cells. The primary benefit is that it's very descriptive, and so if you can imagine long formulas, it's very clear what's going on here. But there are plenty of downsides. So I'll add to this, but you could say, okay, now if I want to multiply share price by shares outstanding, so here I have shares outstanding of, say, 5, whatever it is. You can imagine that calculating market cap is a lot easier to understand if you are using the Apple share price. You see this a lot in models. So in the manual, we talk about the danger of that, and I generally say it's good to avoid. And the reason why it's good to avoid it is for all the good of just being able to see a more descriptive cell reference, it's far more difficult to trace calculations using F2. So for example, going in here, we use F2 to get inside a cell and to audit a cell. So how do I actually figure out what this is? Imagine you've got a model and it's referring to share price, and you want to figure out what the actual share price is. Where do I go? Had it said sheet 1 C8, I would have known exactly where to go. But now I can't go there. I don't know where this is. I have to literally pull up there's nothing natively in Excel short of just clicking the Alt Trace Precedence utility, double clicking on this thing and having it go there. That's really the only way that you can do that. So it's much more difficult to audit cells. So that's probably the biggest downside of this. But there are other downsides. The other downsides is that once you delete names, it creates errors in all the dependent cells. And since it's much harder to audit, if I go to the name manager, because I've got a file with a ton of names, and I inadvertently delete the share price, this thing just pops up. And you'll be surprised at how often that happens, where now you've got formulas you didn't realize they were dependent on that name, and share price no longer exists. Excel, you have no idea what this is referring to. Lastly, names linger in sheets and create confusion. As often happens when you're building financial models, they're often copied from one file to another. You're just sort of reusing models over and over again. And to the extent that folks are creating names, if you ever opened up an Excel file and you've gotten an error like this, it says a sheet that you want to move or copy contains the name whatever, which already exists on the destination worksheet. This happens a lot, and you end up having more and more names in an Excel file, and you can never really get rid of them because you don't know which cells depend on what, which cells depend on which names. And so generally, it's good to avoid naming cells. Another thing that you generally want to avoid is linking files. Excel allows you to link to other Excel files. In fact, we did it in one of our exercises where we auto-colored based on whether you link to another Excel file altogether. The problem is, of course, others may not have access to all the linked files. If you're using a file that has links to other files and you send that to, say, a client, and you forget or inadvertently don't include the other linked file, it might start populating errors throughout your model because the person who receives it won't have the actual source filing. And so although when they actually open it initially, everything will be fine, but as soon as they start doing some work on there and Excel tries to find the original data, it's going to create problems. So generally try to avoid doing this. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but if you can't avoid doing this. If you get in trouble and you have, and you want to get rid of links, you inadvertently put links in and you want to get rid of them, you can open up the Edit Links utility. Alt-AK will open that up, and you can hopefully see all the links to other files. And then you can actually break the links, you can follow the link. So you can technically break links and replace them with values. And of course that can't be undone, so you have to be careful. But the problem with break links is that it doesn't always work. We've included some information about Microsoft has a wizard that lets you try to break links when you can't, when break links doesn't work. And a lot of times there are these hidden links where you won't even see them within Edit Links. They'll pop up, you'll get errors every time you open up Excel telling you that there are some links, and then you won't be able to find them or break them. So generally, and this happens when you link to other files, so generally avoid that. Okay, the next thing to just be careful on is deleting significant portions of a model. When deleting entire worksheets from a model, ensure that there are no references to that worksheet in other worksheets. And there's no perfect way to do that. If you're going to delete an entire worksheet, there's no simple way to just make sure that there's there are no dependent cells or worksheets. Some ways to try to mitigate the potential harm of this is to check potentially dependent worksheets by hitting Control F and typing in the worksheet name. So let me show you what I mean by that. You can go to an Excel file. So let's go to this model, and notice that this model has two tabs. If I wanted to delete this, the FSM tab, let's say I wanted to delete the financial statement model tab, and I wanted to make sure that none of the other tabs, in this case just the DCF tab, doesn't have any cells that refer to the financial statement model tab, recognizing that this is the tab's name, I could just go into the DCF tab, hit Control F, and type in financial statement model. And since cell references to other worksheets have the actual worksheet name, you're going to see you can click Find On, you'll see all the references. Well, guess what? There's 97 references here. And you can see where all of them are. This is a reference to financial statement model. This is a reference to financial statement model. So this is a quick way to just kind of double check if you're going to delete a tab. Go to the other active tabs and just see if there's any references to the tab that you're about to delete. Okay. Of course, you can also use trace dependence, both the boost capability and just the regular native capability in Excel. But the problem with that is if you want to trace dependence, you have to do it cell by cell. So here I can click on this cell and I can hit Control Shift trace dependence, and it'll take me to other tabs where these numbers are that reference this cell. The problem with that is you have to do it cell by cell. So this cell does have a dependent. This cell does have a dependent. But for example, this cell only has internal dependence. Nothing that goes to another worksheet.